Good Shabbos. This week is Parshas Dvarim, but it's also Shabbos Chazon, which is the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. And again, I'd like to read from the Gemara in Masechta Gittin and Tractate Gittin, which talks about the destruction of the temple and other battles that the Jews lost. And I'm going to actually just read what the Talmud actually tells us, and the lesson is quite obvious. It says, through a rooster and a hen, Tur Malka was destroyed. How? It was the custom that when a bride and bridegroom were being escorted, a rooster and a hen were carried before them, as if to say, be fruitful and multiply like fowls. One day a band of Roman soldiers passed by and took the animals from them, so the Jews fell on them and beat them. So they went and reported to the emperor that the Jews were rebelling, and he marched against them. And then it tells a story, a side story of there was one fellow, a Jewish fellow, who was very strong and able to jump great distances, and he would have been able to beat all of these Romans. And but a miracle happened and saved the emperor. So the emperor said to himself, since a miracle has been wrought for me, I will let them off this time. So he left them alone and went. The Jews began to dance about and eat and drink, and they lit so many lamps that the impress of a seal could be discerned by their light a mile away from the place. So the emperor said, are the Jews making merry over me? And he again invaded them. Rav Asi said 300,000 men with drawn swords went into Tur Malka and slaughtered for 3 days and 3 nights, while on the other side dancing and feasting was going on, and one did not know about the other. I was going to read the other section, which deals with another story. Through the shaft of a litter, I believe it's like a wagon, Beitar was destroyed, and it was the custom when a boy was born to plant a cedar tree, and when a girl was born to plant a pine tree, and when they married, the tree was cut down, and a canopy was made of the branches. One day the daughter of the emperor was passing, whom the shaft of her litter, again her wagon, broke, so they lopped some branches off a cedar tree and brought it to her. The Jews thereupon fell upon them and beat them. They reported to the emperor that the Jews were rebelling, and he marched against them. And it goes on to tell the story of how Beitar was destroyed, and there was literally rivers of blood from the destruction, from the amount of people that were killed. And historians also tell us that this was one of the greatest sort of genocides in Jewish history. And I think all you have to do is read that Gemara, and the story is telling you something very simple. What were they focusing on? They were focusing on the fact that they wanted to have symbols of great marriages, be fruitful and multiply, live a happy life. And they did that by using symbols, whether it was a rooster and a hen or different types of trees that they planted, beautiful ideas. But they lost sight of what they're trying to aim for. So when the Romans or the emperor or the emperor's daughter took it away, they ran and beat them, put themselves in danger. Why? Because that symbol of fertility, of future growth, of prosperity was taken from them. So they risked their lives for the symbol and not realizing that what they were doing was obviously just in total contradiction to what their whole intention was in creating these beautiful symbols. And the first story is even, I think, tells you another message. When they were saved, they just focused on the here and now. We're saved, we could be happy. And they forgot that the Romans are still there. The Romans are seeing that they're happy and that they're going to be upset about the fact that they're partying. And they came and they destroyed them. And I think it's a very simple message, but it's one which we all have to take to heart, because we all do that. We sometimes focus on the details, whether it's a segula, whether it's a simple type of somewhat superstition or symbol that we create. We focus on that and we forget what we're here for. We forget what we're aiming for. We forget the purpose of our life. We forget our morals and ethics because we're so focused on the particulars of a specific mitzvah or a tradition, and sometimes we forget what it's all about. I'm not suggesting that we forget our traditions, but we have to realize what they're for. And if you have a nice minhag, a nice custom to have a rooster and a hen, or a cedar tree and a palm tree, that's only there in order to get to where you're going. Don't jeopardize your life for that. But we do that all the time. It's true not only on a major scale, like with the Jewish people and the stories that we just read, but it's also true in family life. How many times do we focus in our own families, even with our own children, on small details because we want our children to be happy? We want our children to respect us, instead of realizing that we're undermining everything we're trying to do by focusing on small details rather than looking at the larger picture. Sometimes we have to compromise on the details. We have to compromise on the particulars that we created and the details of the rules that we have, and try to look at the larger picture. It's a very simple message, but it's one which we all forget almost every day, because it's very hard to give up on something that we consider special or we hold dear to. But that's exactly what we have to do, and that's, I think, the criticism that the Talmud is creating on the Jews of that time, that they, and as it says, I would just suggest, as it says in Isaiah, it says, does God want your sacrifices? He wants you to serve God. So of course the sacrifices are important. The sacrifices are mandated in the Torah. But you have to understand that the sacrifice in the temple to serve God, if you just bring the sacrifices and you don't serve God, you forget about what the rules of the Torah are there for, to create a moral society, to create people who have good character traits and treat each other respectfully, then the sacrifices are not worth it. Davening is important, but you have to remember what you're davening for. There's so many obvious examples that we can give, and I think everyone could draw the conclusion that they should. And hopefully we take this lesson to heart. We go through this week where we're coming to Tisha B'Av and we're mourning the destruction of the temple, but we're not just mourning the loss, we're also mourning the fact that we were not successful in following our goal really is, to serve God, to be better people, not to be, like I said last week, by Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, to be petty in how we treat other people. We have to do Gemilas Chasadim, we have to do kindness, and not just acts of kindness, giving charity. You also have to remember that in your daily lives, right? Because you could focus so much on charity that you walk by the person who really needs your help because you're on your way to do a great deed. No, you have to remember that the purpose of giving charity is to help people. When you see someone in need, you have to help them also. Many different examples, and hopefully we learn from that. And Tisha B'Av is really the time when we could focus on that, and hopefully this is the last Tisha B'Av that we'll ever have to commemorate. Good Shabbos.